There's a certain kind of tension that appears without warning. Someone says something kind. They notice your work. They tell you you're good at something. They mean it. And instead of warmth, you feel your chest tighten. Instead of gratitude, there's an instinct to look away. You smile. You thank them. You deflect. You say it was nothing, or luck, or someone else's doing. And then you move on quickly, before the moment can settle. Most people assume praise feels good, that compliments land softly, that being seen for something positive brings ease. But for many, it doesn't. There's a quiet strain that comes with being noticed, a discomfort that has nothing to do with the person speaking or the accuracy of what they said. It happens in small moments. A colleague praises your presentation. A friend tells you they admire how you handled something difficult. A partner says they're proud of you. The words are kind. The intention is clear. And yet something inside you recoils. Not loudly, not visibly, but enough that you feel the urge to change the subject, to minimize, to redirect attention anywhere else. It's not false modesty. It's not humility. It's something harder to name. A feeling that being seen this way is uncomfortable in a way criticism never quite is. Criticism, strangely, can be easier to receive. It confirms something familiar. It fits into a shape you already know. But praise doesn't fit. It asks you to hold still while someone looks at you clearly, and that stillness feels unbearable. The discomfort doesn't announce itself as fear. It arrives as restlessness, a subtle pull to move, to joke, to turn the focus elsewhere. You might laugh it off, say something self-deprecating, point out a flaw before anyone else can. You might redirect the compliment back to the other person, or credit circumstances, timing, anyone but yourself. These aren't conscious strategies, they're reflexes, and beneath them is something you've learned not to examine too closely, a sense that being appreciated creates exposure. That when someone sees you clearly enough to notice something good, they might also see everything else. The parts you work to keep hidden, the doubt, the inconsistency, the places where you don't measure up to what they think they're seeing. So the compliment becomes a spotlight you didn't ask for. And spotlights reveal. Many people describe this moment as feeling caught, as though they've been seen doing something they weren't supposed to be doing, even when the thing is neutral, even when it's good. The visibility itself feels like a risk. There's a pattern here that runs deeper than manners or modesty. When someone offers praise, it implies they've been watching, that they've formed an opinion, that they see you as someone worthy of comment. And if you've spent years trying not to draw too much attention, trying to stay small enough to avoid judgment, this attention feels dangerous, even when it's positive. Because attention, in your experience, has never been neutral. It has meant scrutiny, expectation, the possibility of disappointment later. So you've learned to manage it by avoiding it altogether. You stay helpful but not visible, competent but not remarkable, present but not prominent. And when someone breaks that pattern by noticing you anyway, the instinct is to restore the balance, to shrink back down, to remind them, and yourself, that you're not someone who should be looked at this closely. The deflection feels like safety, but underneath it is something quieter, a low hum of shame. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because being seen feels like evidence of something you've been trying to avoid, that you matter enough to be noticed, and mattering, for reasons you can't fully explain, feels more threatening than disappearing. The real discomfort isn't about the compliment itself. It's about what the compliment asks you to believe. When someone praises you, they're offering a version of you that doesn't match the one you carry inside. They see competence. You see effort barely holding together. They see talent. You see luck, timing, or a mistake not yet discovered. They see someone worth acknowledging. You see someone still trying to prove they belong. And when those two images sit side by side, one of them has to be wrong. For many people, the instinct is to trust the inner version, the one built over years, the one that feels more familiar, more accurate, more true. That version knows your failures. It remembers every time you fell short. It keeps a record of the moments you weren't enough. So when someone from the outside offers a different picture, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like a threat. Because if you accept what they're saying, you have to question what you've believed about yourself. And that belief, painful as it is, has been organizing your life. It's explained why you work harder than others, why you prepare more, why you don't celebrate your wins or rest after finishing something difficult. It's kept you safe from disappointment by keeping expectations low. It's protected you from the risk of being seen as arrogant, entitled, or unaware of your limitations. But compliments don't cooperate with that system. They suggest you might be more capable than you've allowed yourself to believe. And if that's true, then all the years spent bracing for failure start to feel unnecessary. All the self-criticism starts to look like something other than realism. All the hiding starts to seem like a choice you didn't know you were making. This is where the fear sharpens. Because the compliment isn't just asking you to accept praise, it's asking you to be seen, fully, clearly, without the buffer of self-doubt to soften the exposure. And being seen means being known. Not as the person you present, not as the role you fill, but as the actual person beneath all of that, the one who tries, who cares, who wants to be valued. That person feels too vulnerable to show. Because if people see that version of you and still walk away, the rejection won't land on your performance or your effort. It will land on you. So you've learned to stay one step ahead of that possibility. By rejecting yourself first. By keeping your self-image low enough that no one else's opinion can reach it. By making sure that even when people say kind things, you don't let them in far enough to matter. The compliment becomes a reminder of how much you're protecting. Not just your image, not just your reputation, but the deep, quiet belief that if people really knew you, they wouldn't stay. That love, attention, and belonging are conditional. That the moment you stop performing, proving, or perfecting, the kindness will stop too. So when someone offers you a compliment, what you hear beneath their words is a question you're not ready to answer. What if you've been wrong about yourself this whole time? And that question feels more destabilizing than any criticism ever could. The discomfort starts to make sense when you trace it backward. Not to a single moment, not to one event, but to a pattern you learned early and carried forward without realizing it. For many people, attention in childhood wasn't neutral. It came with conditions. You were noticed when you succeeded, ignored when you didn't. You were praised when you met expectations, criticized when you fell short. Or maybe attention itself felt unpredictable. Sometimes it meant warmth. Sometimes it meant anger. Sometimes it meant nothing at all. So you learned to read the room before you entered it, to measure yourself against an invisible standard before anyone else could, to stay small enough to avoid disappointing people, but visible enough to not be forgotten. And over time, that became your default, not because you chose it, but because it worked. It kept you safe from the sharper edges of being seen. But it also taught you something you didn't mean to learn. That being noticed meant being evaluated. That visibility came with risk. That the safest version of yourself was the one that didn't ask for too much attention. So when someone offers you a compliment now, it doesn't land in a vacuum. It lands in a system that was built to protect you from being seen too clearly. And that system doesn't distinguish between kind attention and harmful attention. It just knows that attention requires vigilance. This is why deflecting praise can feel automatic. It's not about the person giving the compliment. It's about the old belief that being seen fully means being seen critically. That if someone notices something good, they'll eventually notice something lacking. That approval is temporary, but judgment is constant. Many people carry a version of themselves they believe is unworthy of sustained kindness. Not because anyone told them that directly, but because kindness, in their experience, was often followed by disappointment. because love felt conditional on performance, because the people who were supposed to see them clearly saw them selectively, saw their achievements but not their effort, saw their mistakes but not their trying, saw their role but not their person. And when that happens enough times, you stop expecting to be seen fully. You stop wanting it, because being seen partially at least is something you can manage. You can control which parts people notice. You can curate what's visible. Once you can stay just close enough to connection without risking real exposure. But compliments disrupt that control. They suggest that someone has seen past the version you've been managing, that they've noticed something true. And if you've spent years believing the true version isn't worth noticing, that moment feels disorienting. Not because the compliment is false, but because accepting it means loosening your grip on the story you've been telling yourself. The story that says you're only valuable when you're useful, that you're only worth attention when you've earned it, that being seen without armor is dangerous. This is the belief that makes compliments uncomfortable, not the words themselves, but what they ask you to consider. That maybe you've been harsher with yourself than necessary. That maybe the version of you that you've been hiding is the version that deserves to be seen. That maybe other people aren't waiting for you to fail. They're just noticing what's already there. And the discomfort you feel isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that something old is being challenged. A rule you learned when you were younger and didn't have the language to question. A rule that says safety comes from smallness. That belonging comes from not asking for too much. That love is something you have to earn by never needing it too visibly. But that rule was never true. It was just the best answer you had at the time. And now, when someone offers you a compliment, you're being given a chance to write a different one. Not by forcing yourself to accept praise, but by recognizing that your discomfort isn't proof of unworthiness. It's proof of how much you've been protecting a part of yourself that was never broken to begin with. There's no instruction here for how to receive a compliment correctly. No technique to master. No reframing exercise to practice. Just a quieter understanding that the discomfort you feel doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be recognized for what it is. A learned response. A protective reflex. A reminder that somewhere along the way, you decided being small was safer than being seen. And that decision made sense at the time. It kept you from being hurt in ways that felt unbearable. It helped you survive environments where approval was uncertain and criticism was sharp. It gave you a way to move through the world without asking for more than you thought you'd receive. But survival strategies don't stop when the danger passes. They linger, they adapt, they become part of how you see yourself. And sometimes, the very thing that once protected you becomes the thing that keeps you distant from the kindness you actually want. So when someone says something kind and you feel that familiar pull to deflect, dismiss, or disappear, you don't have to fight it. You can just notice it. Notice the tension. Notice the urge to minimize. Notice the part of you that still believes being noticed is the same as being judged. And then, without pressure, without force, you can make space for a different possibility. That maybe this person isn't asking you to prove anything. That maybe their words aren't a test you need to pass or a trap you need to avoid. That maybe they're simply offering you a reflection you haven't allowed yourself to see. And you don't have to accept it fully. You don't have to believe it right away. You can just let it exist without needing to argue with it. You can say thank you, not because you're convinced, but because someone took the time to see something in you they thought was worth saying aloud. And that alone is worth acknowledging, not as proof of your value, but as evidence that you're visible in ways you didn't realize, that people notice your care, your effort, your presence, even when you're trying not to take up space. Over time, if you let yourself sit with that without immediately pushing it away, something small begins to shift. Not a transformation, not a sudden confidence, just a loosening, a sense that maybe being seen doesn't have to mean being exposed, that maybe visibility and vulnerability aren't the same thing, that maybe the version of yourself you've been protecting so carefully is already whole, already enough, already worth the attention you've been so afraid to receive. There's no rush to believe that, but there's also no requirement to keep arguing against it. You can simply exist in the space between doubt and acceptance, between the old belief and the newer, quieter one. And in that space, compliments stop feeling like tests. They start feeling like what they were meant to be. Small moments of recognition, offerings of care, reminders that you're not invisible, even when you've tried to be. And you don't have to perform gratitude. You don't have to match their energy or prove you're worthy of their words. You can just receive them, not as evidence of who you need to become, but as acknowledgement of who you already are. I'm the person who tries, who cares, who shows up even when it's hard. The person who has spent so long managing how they're seen that they forgot they were allowed to simply be seen, without commentary, without correction, without the need to make themselves smaller so others feel more comfortable. You've been carrying the belief that mattering is conditional, that love is something you earn by never needing too much of it, that being enough requires constant proof. But the discomfort you feel when someone compliments you isn't evidence that you're not enough. It's evidence that you've been holding yourself to a standard no one else is asking you to meet. And maybe, slowly, you can start to put that standard down. Not because someone convinced you to, but because you're tired of carrying it, and because, at some point, you deserve to know what it feels like to be seen without flinching, to be appreciated without apologizing, to matter without having to justify it. That's not something you achieve. It's something you allow, and it begins the moment you stop treating kindness like something you have to defend yourself against.